Hey all you addicts out there, welcome back to another Addicted Fishing tutorial. My name's Jordan Carnegie from Addicted Fishing, and if you guys are new to this channel, be sure to go down here and hit subscribe and that little bell notification. We're Addicted Fishing and we come out with all kinds of content from educational to inspiring to just plain entertaining stuff from all over the world, fishing for all different kind of species. So subscribe to this channel to see more. And what we're doing today is going over a little tutorial and a little how to do some trout fishing. What we're going to show you guys today from start to finish, we're going to show you how to use a sliding float system for trout fishing with bait or any other kind of lure that you're going to use. So stay tuned, it's coming at you right now. First thing we're going to talk about today is our rod, reel, and line selection that we're going to use in order to effectively fish a float like this. What we have here is an ultralight trout fishing rod. This is an Okuma. I like any kind of rod that is an ultralight or ultralight rating. This one is a 7.6, 2 to 6 pound rod. And what that does is it allows you to cast well, one, because of that flexibility and that flimsiness of the rod, so you can really whip the light presentation out there. And two, it's a lot of fun to fight any kind of size fish on this light rod, on these ultralights. So this is my favorite little setup, a 2 to 6 pound rod. You can go a little bit heavier, but any brand works just as fine as long as it's kind of that same rating from 2 to 10 pounds. This is an Okuma Guide Select Pro, which is one of my favorite. What I have this reeled with is an RTX, another Okuma product, an RTX 30S. This is a 3000 series reel, which is not imperative for this kind of fishing, again, because it's a little bit oversized, but I like buying anywhere from a 2 to a 3 to a 4000 series reel just because it's very versatile. You can put different line on it and use it for a lot of different applications, whether it be for crappie or bass or trout or anything that you're going to want to use this system for, and you can take it from rod to rod and change it out and use it for a lot of different adaptations. So I have a 10-pound braided line on here, and that 10-pound rating is pretty imperative in my mind, mainly because of its lightness and its ability to cast. It goes through the guides very easily. One, you can fit a lot of line on this reel. Two, and that you can cast a lot better with a light presentation with that light braided line. So anywhere from a 10 to a 15 to a 20-pound braided line is going to work really well for this setup. What I'm going to do next is probably the most important part, in my opinion, and not incredibly necessary, but the way we're going to use our sliding float today is going to have a stopper on there. And in order to get that stopper to stay on your line, I'm actually going to add a bumper of fluorocarbon line to this 10-pound braid. So what I have here is some 12-pound ultralight fluorocarbon that I have here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically think about how deep of the spot it is that I'm going to fish, whether it's 10, 12, 15, 20, 25 feet, and that's how much line I'm going to pull off. Today I don't think it's more than about 10 feet out there, so I'm going to pull off about 10 feet of line, and I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to attach these two lines together with a blood knot. And I'll show you guys, we have a lot of other Addicted tutorials that you can find links to in the descriptions down below that'll show you how to do some of these knots properly. But I'm going to kind of show you quick here on the river, and I don't know if you guys are on the lake, and I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it really well, but I'm going to tie a blood knot to connect these two lines. So I've crossed those two lines just like so, making an X. I hold it with my index and my thumb of my left hand, and I'm going to take that line first with the braided, and I'm going to wrap it about 8 to 10 times around my fluorocarbon line, just like so. Just like that. Okay, so now that I have all those wraps like so, I'm going to grab it right at the last wrap, and I'm going to let go with my left hand and hold that fluorocarbon line straight up in the air so that I can grab it with that index finger, just like that. From there, I'm going to fold this braided line back over and in between my index finger and thumb, going over the top of your braided line. And I'm going to do the same thing with my fluorocarbon that I did my braid here, and I'm going to wrap it about 8 times around my braid, like so. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now what I'm going to do with that tag end of the fluorocarbon is I'm going to go back through the hole that's created right where the braided line comes through, just like so. So now what I have is wraps on each side. Both lines are going through the same hole in the middle there, and I'm going to slowly pull that tight, giving it a little lubrication, and there it is. That's a good blood knot there. And if you don't have the lines coming out of both sides, odds are it's not a proper knot. If they're both coming out of the same side, if the braid and the fluorocarbon are coming out of the same side of that knot, you're gonna have to redo it because it will break fairly easily. So I'm gonna trim my tag end here, just like so. And now that I have that 12-pound bumper on the front here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a bobber stop. And these come in all kind of different variations. I like the ones that I have here, they're a rubber style, they're a rubber stopper, just like so. They come on a little wire like this, or you can use a nail knot of a piece of thread to tie on your line, or even a heavier gauge line to stop that float with these little beads like this. But I have these little bobber stops here, or line keepers, or anything else that we called in the store. So I'm gonna put my line right through that little eyelet. I'm gonna grab the bead that comes on that wire, covering up with my hands, and I'm gonna slide it over both ends of that line. So see how that kind of pulls over those ends and right up onto my line. So there's my first start. I got my braided line to my fluorocarbon to now my bobber stop with a bead, and now I'm gonna grab my sliding float, which is obviously the whole key of this whole deal. So what this does, now that I have this bobber stop, is it allows me to adjust my depth given the spot that I'm fishing, to have that bait either suspended or sitting down close to the bottom, or so on and so forth, wherever you want it in the water column, so that these trout can come and find it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put that tag end of my fluorocarbon right through the float, yellow end up first, orange end, whatever color it is, and I'm gonna let that slide all the way to my bead. Okay, so now that that's done, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take my barrel swivel and I'm gonna connect it to my 12-pound test, just like so, running it right through one end of that barrel swivel, doing just a normal clinch knot, 7 wraps or so, and back through the eye of the line that I've created. Give it a little lubrication once again. I'm gonna cut my tag in. So now what I have the float, the bobber stop to the float, all the way down to my barrel swivel, which is gonna stop that float from going any further down. Now I'm gonna use my leader line, which is gonna be an 8-pound fluorocarbon, 8 to a 6. I probably wouldn't go any lighter than a 6 unless you're fishing some super clear water, or you notice the fish are having a hard time biting because you're scaring them with your line. So I'm gonna use a 6-pound fluorocarbon here. I'm gonna go about 3.5 feet on my leader line here. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. Add that to my barrel swivel here to the other end. Just like so. And then I'm gonna add a number 4 hook. And this is gonna be a bait keeper hook. This is the hook that works best for this kind of adaptation, whether we're gonna be using power bait or whatever else I have next to me. I'm gonna go over here in a second. A nice bait keeper hook like this from Mustad, size number 4, is gonna be your best choice for a technique like this, because it's gonna keep that bait on your hook with these little spurs that they have on the back end of the shank of the hook there. So that's gonna keep your bait on your line easier and for longer, especially if those fish are coming up and nipping at your bait and trying to pull your float under. Gonna just connect that with a normal clinch knot once again, 7 wraps, and back through the eye. Okay. So now, last but not least, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna add my weight. And there's a few different ways you can do this. There are inline weights that you can use for this setup, but what I'm gonna do, just so I know I have the right amount of weight each time I'm doing this, is I'm just gonna add some split shot above my barrel swivel. They do make inline weights with little swivels that come out of each end of that weight, which you could use up to a 1/2 ounce or an ounce even if you wanted to, but I'm gonna go with a lot lighter here today, like a 1/4 ounce. So I'm gonna take 2 number 7 split shot, just like so. And I'm gonna add those right underneath my float above my barrel swivel on the 12-pound test, not the 6. Lay that line through there, squeeze it. Once again, lay that line through there and squeeze it. I'm gonna slide those weights right down to my barrel swivel, and then I'm gonna secure them tightly with my pliers here, just like so. So there's our complete setup, you guys. We have the rod, reel, line, all the way down to my tippet, or my 12-pound bumper, down to my bobber stop right there, the little red guy, down to my float with the 2 split shots, barrel swivel, 6-pound leader, down to my hook. So now we're gonna go through and show you guys some of the bait and some of the things that you wanna use to rig this up, to throw out there, and then I'm gonna show you how to cast out and fish it. So what I have here in front of me is pretty much everything that you're gonna wanna put on your line. They don't all work all the time, but every one of them works in their own case. What I have here from left to right, I have night crawlers or any kind of worms that you could find. We have some canned corn. We have little salmon eggs, little cured up natural salmon eggs. We have little things like this. These are pretty handy for this sort of fishing because your bait lasts a long time. But these are your little power eggs, little garlic scented power eggs, that little rubber eggs that stay on your hook really, really well. We have our normal power bait of any sort of flavor that you like or have heard works well in your local area. And then we have some scents that we're gonna add to that. So what we're gonna start with first, because it's one of my favorites, we're just gonna go ahead and put a nice little night crawler on here, because this technique works very well for any kind of live bait, because that bait is gonna be suspended above the bottom of the lake and not gonna be able to get down to the bottom and fall where those fish can't find it. So I'm gonna go ahead and break off half a worm here. I'm not gonna use the whole thing, so I'm not gonna need it all. I'm gonna run my hook right through the end that I broke off there, about 1.5 to 2 inches up into that bait. Then I'm gonna pull that hook through, slide it up onto the hook shank, and look at that, we're fishing. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna register my depth. I think out there I'd say it's probably about 8 to 10 feet deep, so I'm gonna slide my bobber stop to that 8 to 10 feet here. That's about 6 or so. I'm gonna go about 1 more foot. Sliding that float up 1 more foot to about 8 feet. And here we go, we're gonna cast it on out and let it set. And actually that looks perfect. So you guys see, if Sean can zoom in out there, you can see how this float is sitting straight up and down. If it was laying vertically on the surface, I would need to either one, add more weight, or excuse me, not vertically, it's sitting vertically now. If it was laying parallel with the surface, that would mean you need to either get less distance or less depth on your bobber stop. So you'd slide that bobber stop back down towards the bobber, and or you'd add or subtract weight. You're gonna have to match how much weight you use to the size of float that you're using. This one I'm using is a 1/4 ounce slide float. But again, you can use them all up and down through the ranges. It's better to have a smaller float so that it's easier for those fish to pull it under than it is to have a really large float, unless you're fishing for really big fish like salmon or steelhead. But this is your basic and your easiest slide float setup you can do for any kind of trout, crappie, bass, or anything that you're gonna be fishing for with a suspended bait. So once your float's sitting out in the body of water that you have in front of you and you can tell it's set at the right depth, what you want to do is either put your rod in a rod holder or up against your cooler or a lawn chair, anything that you're going to be able to just let that rod rest so that you're not messing with your float at all. You want it to sit out there naturally and float naturally around until something wants to come up and eat it. Once you do see a bite registering on that float out there where it'll be bobbing up and down, what's very imperative to make sure you catch more fish is letting that float completely go under from that fish's bite. If it starts bobbing up and down and getting a real light bite, you don't want to go and set the hook too early. So what's key is to be patient, watch that float, wait for it to completely submerge, then reel down and give it a nice secure hook set, lifting straight in the air, keeping your tip high and reeling fast until you can feel tension against you and that fish. All right, everybody, well, I hope that made it a little bit clearer and a little bit easier for you to pick up the concept of fishing with a slide float on any kind of body of water, whether it be a lake, creek, stream, or any kind of pond, anywhere you're gonna find fish that you wanna use this suspended system for. If you guys like what you saw today, be sure to go down here and like and comment on this video what your kind of favorite bait or what's your favorite size slip float that you like to use for this kind of fishing. We'd love to get that conversation started and share some of this info with everybody out there so they can go out and enjoy having fun catching fish wherever they live in the world. So again, if you like this, guys, be sure to like, leave that comment, subscribe to this page, and hit that bell notification. Thank you so much for tuning in today, you guys. You guys stay fishy, and we'll see you out there.